Hello everybody and welcome back to another Phasmophobia video. And today we're going to go over 10 tips to master Phasmophobia. My first tip is going to be to make sure that you turn your flashlight off before switching to other items. I think every player has noticed that even if you turn your flashlight off and then you switch back to it, it will just automatically turn back on. And so if you have your flashlight out and manually turn it off, then you can switch through your items without your flashlight automatically coming on. My next tip is to master dots placement. And although the tier 2 and tier 3 are pretty easy to cover a lot of area, the tier 1 can kind of be hard, so my advice is to place it on an elevated surface and try and cover the most area that you can. And with the higher tier dots, sometimes it could be nice to place it on a ceiling or place it on a piece of furniture. Just make sure you don't put it in a corner and you'll be good to go. Speaking of dots, they can actually act as an unconventional light. Now I wouldn't necessarily rely on this all the time, but this was something I love to do during the Apocalypse challenge, and it's a really effective way to give yourself some form of light while also trying to navigate around the map, or even giving you a little bit of light so you can see the ghost while it's hunting. My next tip is to narrow down ghosts based on speed, and you don't necessarily need to know the exact speeds yet. Just being able to recognize what ghosts are fast and what ghosts are normal speed can be very helpful. And a quick list of abnormal speed ghosts are Raiju around equipment, a Moroi, a Revenant, a Hantu, a Deogen, twins, sometimes a Mimic, and the Thay. Speaking of ruling out ghosts, if you ever doubt it's a poltergeist, it usually isn't. And I feel like I'm guilty of this, but every time I see a ghost throwing a lot of objects, I instantly start to think it's a polty. Anytime you do see a poltergeist throwing a bunch of stuff and throwing things super far, you'll realize that you'll never actually doubt yourself if you're dealing with a poltergeist. My next tip is to use motion sensors to track ghost movement. Anytime I encounter a ghost that likes to roam a lot, I sometimes like to set up motion sensors just to keep tabs on where it is. The worst thing that could happen is the ghost hunting behind you. And also, motion sensors can be used to track the direction the ghost is moving in. If you set up two tier 1 or tier 2 motion sensors next to each other, you'll see the order they get triggered in, so that'll help you determine what direction the ghost is moving in. Although this might seem obvious, never hide in the ghost room. And sometimes your only hiding spot is going to be in the ghost room, but just be very careful if you choose to hide there. It's very probable that the ghost will spawn on top of you while initiating a hunt. And although you might get lucky and survive, I just recommend not to risk it. A fun tip I have is to utilize the camera to watch for interactions. Watching for dots in the truck might be obvious, but even things like ghost riding or UV with the UV flashlight can be seen from the truck. And while this isn't something that'll be a guarantee or something you can always rely on, just pray the ghost doesn't knock over your camera. Smudging the ghost does a bit more than just blinding it, and newer players might not know this, but after you smudge the ghost, there will be a brief time that the ghost doesn't try and chase a player, but you can also touch or even run through the ghost during this blindness, and it can be very helpful if you get cornered, especially on smaller maps. My 10th tip is that the Glowstick is still the best way to find UV in my opinion. Although UV is a pretty easy evidence to get, I feel like the flashlight's cone shape makes it harder to use sometimes, especially when you're looking for things like UV footprints after the ghost steps in salt. I feel like the 360-degree radius with the Glowstick just makes it easier. It really is just preference, but I feel like the Glowstick is still the best option. And I have some additional tips for console ghost hunters or people who are brand new to the game. First, the text-based spirit box can kind of be a pain since you can't really move around while using it, and the spirit box has a short range where the ghost can interact with it. Just make sure to position yourself strategically in the room and try moving around after a few attempts. Something I mentioned in other videos is that the ghost room is always going to be colder than the rest of the map. Just make sure the breaker's on to accurately check this. On top of using the thermo to find the ghost room, if you notice the room starts to warm up significantly, it means the ghost could potentially have changed its favorite room. This is a small tip, but just double check to make sure your headgear is off during hunts. I feel like it's easy to forget since it's not something you're holding. Another interesting tip is, if you hit the keypad in the truck to close the doors and leave, if you click the keypad again before the loading screen pops up, you can actually reopen the truck doors to stop the game from ending. So in case one of your friends is AFK or you need to double check something, hit the keypad again and you'll be good. And finally, this is something I've mentioned a lot in my other videos, but the best experience for playing with others is to join the Phasmophobia Discord. I only bring this up again because I've seen so many posts on Reddit or even people talking in the Discord about how newer players are kind of treated poorly by people in public lobbies. And so I just want to say, don't let a few bad apples ruin the game for you, because there really are so many people in the community that are kind and helpful. So there's some tips I think that'll help you master Phasmophobia, and thank you so much for watching.